Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It is another Tuesday. It is another WDD Live. Go ahead and say hi in the comments. I am all out of coffee, which is awful news. Absolutely awful news. What's up, Evan? What's up, Philip? What's up, Chris? Chris with no H. It's a C or straight up C-R-I-S. Okay. Good to see you, Chris. Steven's here. Lynn is here. Papa, Digital Domain. Marco's here. Calisthenics Ireland. Good to see you. Jan Paul, D123. Andre is here. Sarah, welcome to the stream. Welcome, 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 everybody. Okay. Is audio good? Is video good?
Sarah,
oh, God. Hold on. We gotta cut this off.
Welcome, everybody. Okay.
Where is that coming from?
Video good? Sarah?
Oh, God.
Okay.
Hold on. All right. Let's go ahead and shut this down.
Okay.
We got the remove favorite. How do we do that? Okay. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Okay. Yo, all right. What's up, Mark? What is up? We're off. Reinhardt's here. Excellent. Okay. We're off to a good start with the double stream, as you can see. Already over 100 people watching. That's fantastic. Listen, here's the agenda for today. You know, normally what we do on WDD Live, we do in-depth, what just happened to the stream numbers? The double stream happened and a bunch of people ditched. They'll be back. Okay. Normally on WDD Live, here's what we do. We in-depth critique websites. We talk about accessibility. We talk about maintainability. We talk about best practices. We talk about the UI. We talk about the UX. We talk about everything that makes a website successful. And in the process, people learn a ton about web design, professional web design, and making their designs better, making their projects better, copywriting, all of that. But what we also do often is take a break from doing that, and we deep dive a specific topic or area or whatever, because it is web design for dummies. That's what WDD stands for. It's web design for dummies, not dummies, dummies. Okay. If you're new here, go back and watch early streams. It's all explained, what that means, but really it's a variety show. It allows us to do anything that we want to do and talk about anything related to web design. And what we're going to do today is we are going to look at a pop quiz that I posted. This pop quiz came from a video that I saw where somebody was teaching, add a class to something, and then you don't need any classes on the child elements. You just need to target the child elements by their HTML tag, by what they are. And, so I decided because a lot of people commented on it, they were like, oh, this is fantastic. I mean, thank you for this, all of that kind of stuff, right? And then it raised my eyebrows. And then I was like, well, let me do a pop quiz. Let me see what people think. So I put two selectors side by side, and I had people vote on them. And I did this on Facebook. I did this on the Inner Circle. I did this on YouTube, which the YouTube post thing, it doesn't seem to do all that much. I did this on Twitter. Anyway, I got a bunch of responses. I figured that this would be pretty clear cut. Like the answer would be pretty clear cut, but it was way more discussion and, voting for one of the versions than I expected. And so I decided, this would actually, a lot of people said this would be a very good topic for a video. And of course I decided, well, why not do it as a live stream then? This is going to help you understand CSS better. This kind of discussion is going to help you understand concepts like organization of your CSS, specificity, selectors. Okay, we're going to build a blog card. Okay, so if you like seeing things get built, like, hey, that's kind of a useful thing, right? Most projects you're probably going to need a blog card of some sort. So we're going to talk about how to build a blog card, and we're going to build it two different ways, and we're going to look at the pros and cons of how this CSS methodology works versus this CSS methodology over here. So are you guys excited for that is question number one. Again, taking a break from doing web design critiques to do something that's actually, super practical and super learn the philosophy behind this. Philosophy in web design is very important. And then what we're going to do is we are going to do Q&A after that. So, and you can ask questions while we go. It's perfectly fine. Just make sure that your question uses a hashtag. So hashtag Q or hashtag question. That way I can filter all of the questions and I can get right to answering, okay, as soon as we're ready for Q&A. Okay, Derek says, I vote for Kevin Bot Bubble in the corner of ACSS 3.0 that yells at me when I make a chump move. We did consider something like that. You know how Bricks, when you save, it's like, fantastic. Oh, you're great. Whatever all those positive affirmation messages are on save. I thought of doing them for automatic CSS, but it would roast you as you did it. You should be able to turn that on, right? There should be a turn this feature on where it roasts me when I'm doing something wrong. And then we could obviously applaud you when you're doing something great as well. Okay, let's do our first thing. Our first thing is going to be taking a look at the actual quiz. So here is the one that I put on Facebook. And I don't know why Facebook still doesn't have a poll feature, or maybe I'm missing it. I think it only exists in groups. It doesn't actually exist on your profile, which is very disappointing. But it was very simple pop quiz. Which one is better and why? And so we have this class, service card, _, featured image. And by the way, I'm on my B team setup here, so can everybody see everything? Are we good? Let me just check. I assume everything is working fine with screen share and all of that. So I'm just gonna just yell at me if something's wrong, and I'll fix it 10 minutes later after I finally realize you're yelling at me. But service card, _, featured image is option A. And then we have service card space figure is option B. And of course, that could be image. And it could be a lot of things. It could be an H2. It could be a paragraph. It could be it's just, I was hoping people would get the context of the question without a whole bunch of deep explanation. And then I just got the answers. And so Jason said service card figure. Now, his reasoning was a little questionable, right? He said, statistically, when somebody asks a question, the answer is the second option. And he was honest. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you. And then we have Brendan here. Is this a quiz? Give feedback. I would say it depends. So Alexander says, I would say it depends on what you want to CSS, but I would say featured image, since who knows what the other image you might be referring to. For service card, it might make sense to just have one image anyway. Okay, service card featured image, and then gave some reasons. And then this person said, well, if you do it this way, in this situation, this one's better. In this situation, this other one's better. Some people just mentioned that they noticed that one of them was BEM, and so I think they voted for that because they've just felt like, well, I mean, I've heard BEM is good, and so I'll vote for that way. But I don't know if they know beyond that why they might vote for that version. So Chris prefers the class name over the element tag name. Steve prefers the figure. There was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of I thought, again, that this was going to be very, very, very clear cut when I asked it. Let's go over to the inner circle, and you can actually see the poll here. 77% did vote for the BEM version, and then 21% voted for the HTML selector version. 2% said they do the same thing, which was when I did the polls, well, at least in the inner circle, that was an option there. The Twitter version, let's see a little bit closer on Twitter. 60% said the BEM version. 40% said the HTML selector version. So, okay. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about it. We're going to go in and let's go into here. And unfortunately, I don't have my two screens, so I have to flip back and forth. Let's see. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're good. Okay. All right. Let's just go ahead and get into it then. So what I'm going to do for this example, we are going to build a blog card. Now, what I will tell you is, and this camera shut off last time. It doesn't handle the heat well in 4K. I might need to turn the fan on in a minute. I'm just reminding myself, mental reminder, that camera may implode at any moment. Okay. So I will tell you that the HTML selector version is a very popular way of writing CSS. BEM is a very popular way of writing CSS. Now, the question I think would be popular amongst whom? Okay? Because one of them is objectively superior to the other. And that's why I thought that this was going to be a very clear-cut quiz, very clear-cut scenario. I expected it to be like, 95% to 5%, something in that realm. And we're going to talk, that's why we're doing this live stream. We're going to go point by point exactly why one way is objectively better than the other. But when I say that there is a lot of popularity in the HTML selector method, I do kind of question, like, it's because that's kind of almost the default. Like, if you don't know BEM and you don't know the reasons, you would probably just think that that's okay. You would just think that that's workable or something. And I think a lot of people just end up doing it that way, maybe because they just don't know better, which is why we have to have these discussions, why we have to go through this stuff. Because there are a lot of ways to skin a cat in CSS and web design, and you have to know the way I'm choosing. Why am I choosing this way? What are the pros and cons of this way versus the 5 other ways that I could possibly do this? And if you know the pros and cons of all the ways and you make a choice, that's one thing. But if you just do this thing and you don't even know the other ways and don't know the pros and cons of the other ways, that's not a great thing. That's not a great thing, right? So that's why the education is super important. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just make essentially a 2-column grid. And we're going to put 2 blog cards side by side. So I have one and there's the other. And I'm just going to, let's just make this a little bit narrower for now. Let's choose like L, okay? So our cards aren't super wide or anything like that. So here's card A and here is card B. We're going to build these from scratch. We're going to talk through it as we go. I'm going to build the HTML selector version first, okay? So I'm going to start out by doing 2 blocks inside of here. So this is going to be my media wrapper. This is going to be my content wrapper. In my content, I know I'm going to want a heading. We're going to start very basic, okay? Text, and then we will do essentially just that for right now, okay? We don't have to over-engineer this or make it too complicated. I'm going to do an image in my image wrapper here. Oh, look at that. I don't even have any images. Completely unprepared, as usual. So what do we want to blog about today? Let's blog about nature, okay? And let's go grab a landscape image. Oh, this is very popular. That's an Unsplash Plus. No, we can't have that, can we? That's for the upper crust web designers. So let's go with let's go. I don't even know what this is. This is a nice little nature park here. Let's go to Squoosh. Squoosh this up. Let me hover, pull, resize. Let's get a little, maybe like 1920 here. Okay, throw that in. And then we'll go back to where we were working and we will drag that in. All right, and then we're going to insert that. Perfect. We're going to make this into a figure tag here. And I think what I want to do, before I do anything else, let's go ahead and talk about let's organize our structure panel, because when you're looking over here, you should be able to see what everything is. This block, image, block, heading, base, that's not good. That's not a good way to do things, okay? You do want to take, this is kind of how I know I'm watching. If you're watching somebody who doesn't organize their structure panel, should be a little bit of a red flag, okay? A little bit of a red flag. This is going to be our HTML card, okay? We'll just call this HTML card. This is going to be a media wrapper. This is going to be media. If you want to know why I say media instead of image, you could obviously go with image wrapper and image. This is a little bit subjective here, but I do think there are pros and cons, and that's why we're talking through it. But I do media wrapper because you don't actually know what media has to go there. I've seen blog cards with video embeds in them, right? And so if that was going to be a video, for example, then image wrapper wouldn't make all that much sense anymore, would it? But media applies to any type of media, and it could even be an audio wrapper. I mean, what if we wanted to use this as like a podcast audio card or something, right? Okay, so you get the point, right? It's just more generic names, but still it's generic, but still descriptive, but doesn't box you in to it being a very, very specific thing, unless that actually needs to happen. We'll call this the content wrapper. We will call this the heading. That's fine. And, you could call this the lead. You could call it the description. Lead is a journalism term. I tend to go with that. But you could call this really whatever you want here, okay? And as you see, automatic CSS already just spacing things out for us. What else do we want to do here? Well, we just want to add a class, okay? And we're just going to call this an HTML card. I'm calling this an HTML card because we're going to be targeting HTML elements with it versus over here, which we will literally just call a blog card because we're going to use BEM and we're going to compare the two versions and all of that, okay? All right, so, and I'm going slow so that we can make sure beginners can follow along and nobody's getting lost and people have time to process and ask questions and things like that. Obviously, it's a live stream. You can't just quickly rewind, you know, you have to wait till later to catch up. So we'll just go nice and slow. We'll make sure everybody's on the same page. Okay, so we have an HTML card. We have a figure. Let's also go ahead and just get a front-end version of this going. And we'll inspect this front end version. Let me put this over here so you guys can see it. Let me, we don't want to zoom in on that side, really. We want to zoom in probably on this side. Okay. So as you can see right here, I'm not going to do all the list semantics and all of that. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this. But we will see that we have the card itself right here. So this div is the card. And if I open it up, we're going to see the two blocks that are inside. These are effectively the two wrappers. They don't have any classes on them right now, so you can't really identify them very easily, but that's the media wrapper and that's the content wrapper. And then when I open the media wrapper, you are going to see a figure tag, and then you'll see the image inside of the figure. And then when I open the content wrapper, you'll see my H3. Oh, and you'll see that this is a div and not a paragraph. That would not be fantastic. I did that on purpose. You're going to see why in just a second, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and hop back into the builder. The HTML card class, according to the tutorial that I was watching and the way that many people do things, is all I need. I've essentially identified that this is the HTML card, and I'm going to do targeting without any additional classes. And this is kind of the sales pitch that you will be given for this approach that, oh, you know, BEM, you got to put a class on everything. That's really time consuming. That really adds a bunch of selectors that you have to worry about. Okay. And in this method right here, I mean, look how easy this was. I mean, I just put an HTML card and then I'm just going to do my styling based on that one class. That's all I need is that one class. Okay. All right, let's build the BEM card. So this is going to be our blog card right here. We're effectively going to do the exact same thing. All right, so what do we do first? We do our wrappers, wrapper. Inside of our wrapper, we're going to do an image. Pop quiz for everybody on the stream. Why do we put our media in a wrapper? Do we need a wrapper for the media? Not technically, but why do I put all my media in a wrapper? That's a pop quiz. It is a good question, and I know it's going to be asked, so I'll just head it off, okay? What is the purpose of that wrapper? Let's go ahead and add a heading, and let's add text here as well. Okay, we'll leave that a div, well, just like we did on the other one, okay? And we'll make this an H3, just like we did on the other one, even though technically there is no H2 in this section, if you notice, so these should not be H3s unless there's an H2 in this section. But again, these are things beyond the scope of this video. You can go watch all my other videos if you want to get all of the details. We're talking about one specific thing right here. All right, so I have my blog card. Let's go ahead and organize the structure panel. So this is going to be my media wrapper. This is going to be my media. And then this is going to be my content wrapper. So you're seeing the same thing get built twice effectively. But we are going to take a different approach to styling. This is going to be the lead as well. Okay, now what I'm going to do on this right side, and I'm going to use an automatic CSS tool for this. You would have to do this manually if you weren't using automatic CSS, but I'm going to click this BEM button right here. And effectively what this is going to do is create and assign all of the classes for me based on the organization that I already did in my structure panel. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And now every single element in here, the media wrapper, you can see right here, has a class. The media has a class. Now, right away, this goes to show that, you know, the one of the arguments against BEM will be, it's so tedious to put a class on every single thing. Well, not really. Not if you use the right tools. It's actually not tedious at all. It's faster and better to do it this way. So you can see one con, and that I would say if you're writing code, that's a con of BEM. A con of BEM is that you have to write a lot of class names. If you are in a page builder and you're not using automatic CSS, it is a con that you have to select everything and manually add a class to it. Okay, that's a con, but automatic CSS deletes that con. And that's one reason, just a small reason, one of 1,000 reasons that you might want to use something like automatic CSS. Now, before we go any further, let's just go ahead and check in with everybody. Are we following along? Have I lost anybody yet? And it's okay to say you're lost. It's okay to raise your hand and say that you missed something. And you can ask a question at this point. If you missed something, you can clarify something if you want to at this point. No problem. We're just going slow, trying to make sure everybody tags along, okay? Nobody's left behind. Okay, let's check on our pop quiz results. Why do images need a wrapper? Andre says you can add, for example, overflow to the image with a wrapper. Rune says if you need pseudo elements to be able to styling and layout, applying custom styles such as padding, borders. You could do that to normal images. Controlling the layout, alignment, position within the parent container. That might come in a little handy. Stephanie says half lost. All right, Stephanie, what are you, is there anything in particular, in specific, that you're confused about that I can clarify? How about that? Okay. Chris says all good so far. Digital says responsive design, grouping related content, JavaScript interactions, accessibility. For the most part, it is because images, if that is going to be an image media, which this is, image tags don't support pseudo elements. Now, putting them in a figure does support pseudo elements, but in a page builder, that's a toggle switch, whether it's a figure or not a figure. And adding a wrapper is not a toggle switch. If you add a bunch of images and then decide, let's say you're like, oh, I'm going to make those all figures. It's okay. I don't need a wrapper because I can do pseudo elements on the figure tag. Excuse me. And then somebody comes along and they're like, actually, those aren't supposed to be figure elements. And you have to remove the figures with just a switch, which is fine. You're screwed now. You don't have the pseudo element capability because you didn't have a wrapper, and you can't add wrappers easily. It's basically an insurance policy, okay? Because adding HTML after a page is created to a bunch of different items is a little bit of a disaster. That's a little bit of a shitty scenario. You don't want to, catch yourself in that scenario. It's far easier to just wrap the damn thing in the beginning, okay? And then you don't have to worry about it. You're covered in all situations. And you have the other issue of with every wrapper, or like a figure element, for example, you get two pseudo elements. You get a before and you get an after, and that's all you get. Okay, pseudo elements can't have their own pseudo elements, at least not yet. So if you need 3 or you need 4, well, you're screwed again. You got to go manually add another wrapper to every instance of those things. Where if you just gave yourself the wrapper in the beginning, which really costs you nothing. Okay, it costs you nothing to do it. It costs you a millisecond of your time, and it costs you 1 extra DOM element on the page for every piece of media, which isn't a lot. I mean, go to Elementor. If Elementor can give us 18 wrappers for everything we add to the page, I think 1 is okay. All right. So it gives you now 4 pseudo elements for every piece of media. It's insurance policy. That's all it is. Okay. Let's see who is lost, because I want to make sure Stephanie. Okay, no, I'm trying to figure out why we put an image in a wrapper. I watched your 101. You mentioned it. Okay, got it. All right, so we're good so far. All right, so HTML card. Obviously, none of these things have classes, right? So I want to do something to, let's say, this featured image or maybe this content wrapper. I want to add padding to this content wrapper. First, I want to, for the HTML card, let's just add a background color. So I'm going to go in here and we're going to do primary light. Okay, let's do primary light as our background color for that card right there. I'm going to do the same thing right over here. So we'll do primary light on this one as well. Fantastic. Okay. Now what I want to do is, you can see this has created a problem right off the bat. And if you're wondering why I use content wrappers, you're about to find out why I use content wrappers. So what is the problem? Let's just pop quiz it. I don't want to do all the work. I want you to tell me what problem have we now created with this design by simply adding a background color to the card. I mean, I wanted to add a background color, and I did what I wanted to do, but it has created a new problem. And how are we going to fix that? Well, just throw in, if you already see the problem and you already know what the solution is, go ahead and throw that in as well. We could just do all this at the exact same time. So yeah, Mano says, oh, you have no padding. Well, that's kind of a description of what's needed versus the problem. The problem is that you have text touching the edge of a box. The background color actually visualizes the box, right? So when I did not have a background color, when it was like this, you didn't know there was a box there. Visually speaking, there's no edge. And thus, this actually looks okay. But the minute you add a background color to this, you go primary light, well, now you've visualized the box. You've shown me where the edges are, and now I can see that the content is actually touching the edges of the box, and that's not something that you want to have happen, right? So I have to add padding in here. Well, this right away is going to show us, at least in a lot of page builders, not every page builder, but in a lot of page builders, where the first card version starts to fall apart. Okay, in the BEM version, I can simply select this content wrapper right here, and I can go to padding, and I can choose, whatever I want my padding value to be. Okay, and then you're also going to notice that this card has a gap in there, so I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to clear the gap out. So now this card on the right looks fine, okay? This card over here, I can't just do that, okay? If I start to do that, I'm going to start to do the exact same thing. And you have to tell me what I'm doing wrong here, okay? What is going wrong right now? As I try to do exactly what I did on the right-hand side. I'm trying to do exactly what I did over there. I'm trying to do it right here. So what is going wrong? What is the difference and what is going wrong? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in my row gap of 0 here as well. They look identical. Something terrible has gone wrong, but they look identical. And this is another kind of, this goes to show you, it's not just how things look. Okay, our job as developers is not to just push pixels around a page. I just push the pixels into place. They look exactly the same. One is terrible and the other one is fantastic. What is the problem now that we have created? So as Sam mentions here, okay, you styled the ID. Right? Did anybody catch that? If you're a beginner, if you're on the beginner side of things, these are the things you have to catch, okay? You have to see, distinction, big distinction in what's happening here. When I clicked this content wrapper on this right side card over here, I activated this class called blog card content wrapper. And I put my styles there, my padding there. On this right side, I styled the ID because there is no class. Why is there no class? Because the proponents of this model said that there should not be one, that the only class should be the main class on my overall card. And you see in a page builder, now they also, by the way, okay, in all fairness, I'm not suggesting that they suggest to style this at the ID level. That's not what's happening. But in a page builder like Bricks, I don't have a choice, really. My other choice is to recognize, well, I can't do that. So let me just get rid of that for a second. I can't do that. You don't want to style at the ID level. We should already know that. That's 101. That's fundamentals. That's day one. Day one CSS. Don't style this shit at the ID level, okay? So how am I going to leverage this HTML card class to add padding to this content wrapper? Golly, this is really, really, really difficult, right? So in some page builders, you can do something like this. You can do HTML card and then another selector, right? And you can style that. That's a valid selector in CSS if it had the periods and all of that stuff, right? You can't do that in Bricks. Bricks does not support that. Bricks does not support complex selectors, compound selectors, combinators, or anything else, okay? You can do one class at a time, one ID at a time, one thing at a time. That's it. Okay. I don't even think you could target HTML elements. It's really a class system. It's not a selector system. Now in like Generate, the new version of Generate blocks, they have an actual selector system. You can write whatever selectors you want, and then you can style them. And that's what was being demonstrated in the video. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay. Let's say that again. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. All right. So now how would we do this in Bricks? You still can do this in Bricks. So we're going to go to the custom CSS box. We're going to use the dynamic root selector, which is the same thing as writing HTML card. Okay. It's just dynamically referencing it in case this class name ever changes, my CSS won't break. That's the only reason really we're doing this, okay? And then I have to target something. I have to target that content wrapper. But guys, the content wrapper doesn't have a name, okay? It doesn't have, there's no unique identifier other than the ID, which I can't use. I've got to stay away from that. So I think what they would say to do in this regard is to add another class just for this one example, just for this one instance, to identify this thing, maybe as the content wrapper, okay? But we're not going to, this is not BEM. They're not recommending BEM here. So, because if they were recommending BEM, they never would have recommended this situation on the left that we've gotten ourselves into. So I think that they would say content wrapper, which would then give me something to target. So I would say root and then content wrapper like this. So the HTML cards content wrapper, that's what I'm targeting. And I'm going to go ahead and add my padding to that. So we're going to do padding and we'll do space M. And now we're back to normal. We're back to, well, normal. Okay. But we didn't style at the ID level. We've achieved the visual outcome that we're trying to achieve, but we have done this in a very, very different way. And this is where we have to start learning about some other CSS concepts, okay? Getting deeper into understanding what exactly is going on here versus what is going on right here. Because visually, again, the same outcome has happened, but in two very different ways with two very different sets of pros and cons that we very much have to be aware of, okay? All right, let's pause here. I'm going to do something to the image in just a second, all right? But we're going to pause here, make sure everybody's following along, okay? No scalability, styling at the ID level, okay? X and Y axis, I don't think that has anything in play. Okay, Stephanie says a bit too fast for her. Well, Stephanie, you can ask questions in the chat, and I'm sure people in the chat will be able to chime in and help you through understanding what exactly is going on. The chat is very knowledgeable and the chat is very responsive. So I'm just going to keep going and we're going to see this stuff play out as we go. So I'm going to focus on the image now because that's actually what the pop quiz was about, right? So remember, we have this image, which is wrapped in a figure tag. Okay. But really, do I target the figure? Do I target the image? It really depends on what I want to do. Both ways, in my estimation, are wrong. The way that this was proposed. We're going to go ahead and just target the image. So that's going to be the easiest thing to look at because what I want to do is I want to change the aspect ratio of the image. That's what I want to do. I want to make sure that these blog images are 16:9 aspect ratio. Okay. So once again, because I'm using bricks, I don't have a complex selector system. I have to write custom CSS. I can't even use the proposed method without writing custom CSS. It's not even an option. So that's obviously one huge downside for a lot of people. So I'm going to go to style and then I'm going to come down here. See how the HTML card just showed up in place of the root selector? Bricks does that sometimes. We're going to go with image. Okay. This is what they proposed. This is what the pop quiz compared, right? It's just instead of figure, I'm doing image and I'm going to do aspect ratio. We can see that if I do 1:1, it becomes a square. If I do 16:9, I did that because I wanted to see if it actually changes anything. It actually does. Okay, so that's not a 16:9 image. So now 16:9 actually does change it because it's not I'm not calling for the same aspect ratio the image was already in. And so this is what they proposed. This is how you should do it. And if you do it this way, you don't need to put classes on everything, guys. You don't have to. It's so much easier. So isn't that so much simpler, right? Then all this BEM stuff, all this naming things. It's already got a name, guys. It's got an image. That's what it is right there. Why don't we just target that thing? Well, let's go into the front end here, and let's inspect one more aspect of this that I alluded to earlier. This div right here, this basic text, okay? We're going to ignore the fact that Bricks already puts a class on this, Brixy text basic, okay? We're going to do what they propose to do, which is target the HTML element, okay? Well, that HTML element is a div, okay? All right, some of you might see it's a little bit problematic. Let's go ahead and just dive in, though. I mean, we got to follow through with this. So we're going to go to HTML card. We're going to go to root. Let's try to type better. Root div, all right? And what I want to do is I want to make that text a little bit smaller, okay? So we are going to say maybe font size. We'll do text S. Oh, well. Ooh, all right. That's a problem, isn't it? All right. I didn't want the heading to change the size. I just wanted the text to change the size, but now the heading is changing the size. Guys, why are they both changing? Pop quiz. Why are they both changing? Now, while you guys are answering that, I'm going to go over here to this card, and I'm just going to select this text, and I'm going to select that class, blog card lead, and I'm just going to go change that to S. And, well, exactly what I wanted happened. Okay, so that's nice. What's happening with this situation over here? What is happening with this situation over here? Let's go back to the chat. Sarah was saying, I was thinking that for border radius, styling all figure images would be easier, but I can see how aspect ratios BEM would be easier. Well, no, I mean, let's do it with border radius also. That's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point. I think we should do it with border radius also. Okay, so Andre says they're both inside divs. Actually, they're both inside the same div, and I didn't even choose a div. It didn't have any other option, so I chose div. And so what somebody might see here is, oh, well, actually, no, that if that was a paragraph, that wouldn't be happening. That was a paragraph that wouldn't be happening. Okay. All right, well, that's a good point. Let's go fix that. So let's make that a paragraph. And we have to change our targeting now. So we're going to go to our HTML card. And instead of targeting this div, if we just say, well, I want the paragraph to be small, now we're in a better situation here. Now we see the heading is correct. We see the text is small, the way that we wanted it to be, because that's what I'm telling. I'm telling the paragraph of this card to be small text. And so it is. And just like it is over here as well. Why is there a size difference? Because this image right here doesn't have the aspect ratio. So I'm going to go to media, content, and we're going to go 16:9. And now both cards once again look completely identical. But still, there is a disaster of a situation happening on the left-hand side that is unknown to anybody that doesn't have the experience to know what is rapidly going off the rails on this left-hand side, okay? But again, the left-hand side is the way that it was taught to be done, so that's the way we're mimicking. Okay, so let's go to the front end and just prove that we are seeing the exact same thing left to right. We've taken radically different approaches to doing this, but same visual outcome. Okay, so let's go back and let's talk about the border radius now. Somebody mentioned border radius. Oh, hold on. Did my... Oh, yeah. Hold on. I just got a warning on the camera. Hold on. Where's that button? Need the button. Where is... Oh, hang on. 1 second. There's a button back here. Where is it? I bought a fan, and this fan like attaches to this little camera. All right, hold on. You're going to look at my wall for a second. Okay. All right, let's go back to eCam. Sorry for the short break. Oh, do we have no signal? Hold on. All right, you may not be able to see me for a little bit. May just have to do the stream. There we go. I think the camera's coming back. No signal. There it is. Okay, good. We're back. The fan is on, so the camera hopefully won't light itself on fire. That's a little adjustment there. Okay. How about there? All right, that's good. All right, let's keep going. All right. Anything in the chat? Anything in it? Are we good? Don't burn your house down. I won't. I thought overheating the camera is a Jonathan thing. No, this is my B team setup, and the camera's very sensitive. A very, very sensitive little camera. Okay. All right. Let's go with the border radius situation. So I would like in my HTML card to target the image, and well, there. Look, we're already targeting the image. Okay. So why don't we just go ahead and add a border radius on that image? And we will do 5 pixels, okay? Something like that. And maybe 10. Let's make it much easier to see. And actually, we're seeing now, obviously, we can't do that. Let's go to the front end and see why we can't do that. You see the edges of the card, right? I wish we could do this for, well, we actually can. If I just add a little padding, we should be good. And then we'll add some border radius to the card, and that will help us out as well. So let's go to the, well, how do I add padding to the media wrapper when it doesn't have a name? Maybe I'll just do it to the figure. How about that? Let's go root and let's go figure. And then let's go padding and let's do space M, because that's what we did on the rest of the card, okay? And then now that that has a border radius, we can do another radius here. We're not going to bother with doing the concentric radius situation and all of that. But I'm going to go to border and I will do 10 pixels here, okay? All right, and now we're in the realm of we're just throwing out random numbers for shit. But as you can see, well, that's actually not great either because now we have too much spacing here. We need, we need to take away the padding on our figure element on the bottom there. Okay, so let's do padding inline, and then we'll do padding block start of space M, and now we're good, okay? And this is just going to allow us to, I did want to do the point of the border race on the image elements. This is kind of the best way to make that happen. All right, let's go ahead and do that on this side. So if I was going to do that on this side, I would just take my media wrapper because that has a class on it, right? And I would just say space M there, and I would do it on the right and the left. And then we would be essentially in the exact same situation. Take my media, and let's go to border and go to border radius, and we'll just do the 10 pixels here. And then on my actual card, we can do the 10 pixels there as well, okay? So this gives us the exact same, not on that, that's the wrong thing. The blog card is where we need to be, okay? And 10 pixels there. And that's gonna give us the same visual outcome once again, okay? So perfect, right? What I wanna do is I wanna make this heading a little bit smaller, okay? It is an H3 heading. I wanna make it the size of maybe my H4 heading because I feel like maybe it's a little too big for our design. Maybe I want a little bit of a tweener size. Maybe I just wanna make it 10% smaller or something like that. So what I'm gonna do over here to do that is I'm just gonna go on the class, I'm gonna go to font size, and we'll choose one of the other heading sizes. I can choose 4, and that's fine. Let's just go with 4. Let's just go, can I do that here on this side? No, I can't do that here on this side. Bricks doesn't allow me to do that. So I'm gonna have to go to the HTML card again, and then I'm gonna have to go back to custom CSS, and I'm gonna have to come down here and say, all right, well, let's do root H4 now. Wait a minute, it's not an H4, it's an H3, isn't it? Let's do root H3, and let's do font size of H4. There we go. So now we've gotten that to look, again, visually the same. Guys, the more I do this, the problem that I've been alluding to the entire time is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Everything you touch this way makes it worse and worse and worse. Nothing has gotten worse over here on the right side. The left side continues to get worse and worse and worse, okay? Okay, now let's start to demonstrate one of the big reasons. We'll just start to maybe add something. Let's say that Bev has entered the discussion, but Bev actually has a good idea this time, okay? And Bev is gonna say, you know what, guys, I like the direction this card is going, but this is a multi-author website. And what we would like to do is add an author, like can we get a little photo, a little headshot of the author, and maybe their name too. I think that would be fantastic. Okay, Bev, where do you want that to go? Well, let's just try putting it at the bottom. We'll just start off putting it at the bottom. Okay, so in my little wrapper situation here, I am just going to put in another little wrapper, all right? And here's the little block, and we're gonna call this an author wrapper, okay? And I will go with, let's put an image in here. Now, is this one gonna need figure tags? Yes. Is it gonna need pseudo elements? If it does, maybe, I haven't seen have you seen a bunch of different pseudo elements just hanging around on an author avatar? Probably not. This is probably one of those scenarios where you could just make an executive decision I probably don't need an extra wrapper there. So we'll just throw this in. So do we have an avatar? Let's go back to Unsplash, and we'll just say, someone that looks like an author. There we go. How about, well, see, Unsplash Plus got us again. She looks like an author. Let's just download her. Okay, let's go back to Squoosh here and bring her in. And, we don't need this to be 1920. Let's go like 600, something like that. All right, save her, and let's go back to where we were. Bring her in. fantastic, and insert. So here's our little author. Oh gosh, well, we start to see, that seems to be a little bit of a, oh dear. Oh gosh, what is, okay. All right, well, that's a little confusing. Let's pause there and let's just try to do that on this side over here. All right, so let's put in our block. All right, so there's our thing there. What do we call it over there? An author wrapper or something? All right, let's just go ahead and throw an image in here. And let's go. It's going to be the same image. We're doing the same card on both sides. Okay, all right, that's what I expected to happen. That's the image I downloaded. So that's what I actually expected to happen. Let's go ahead and put text in here as well. We'll just make that a P for now. And this is going to be the author name, right? Author name. Excellent. So we've thrown some additional elements into this card effectively. We need to give them the BEM classes that all of the other things got, right? So this was blog card, and we're going to do underscore author wrapper. Author wrapper. Now I could auto BEM this again, okay? I'm showing you the manual way of doing this. And what I typically do is I copy that to my clipboard, and then I would just do, this is going to be avatar, right? And really, I would probably want this to say author avatar. It's a little bit more descriptive, and there's no way anybody could be confused as to what this is, what's going on here. And we'll just call this the author name right here. And so this is going to be blog card author name. And so now these all have classes, all right? And now what I'm able to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, this needs to be one-to-one. It needs to be a square. I want to object fit cover it. And I would probably like it to be, somewhat small. Let's do like, let's see if 100 pixels. No, it needs to be smaller than that. Let's do 60 pixels. And then let's do a border radius of what, 50 VW? And then we can put that on all sides just like that. That's starting to look like an avatar, right? Okay, now what do we want to do with this author name right here? Well, I want to make that small text as well. And then I want to put these two things side by side. There's a couple different ways I could do that. I'm going to show you a little grid trick. Okay, we're going to go to grid, and we'll do an auto and then a min-max of 0, 1 FR. And that's going to put them side by side. And then I can just use flex to align these to the center. Okay, the controls are not showing properly, and Bricks is a little dyslexic with its flex controls here. And then we're just going to tone down our little gap situation here. And this is probably where I actually want a static gap, something like an XS or something like that. And then I could even throw, a border on here. I mean, I'm easily able to do a lot of these things. Just, select the class, style it up. No problems, no nothing. Let's go ahead and use our primary dark color here. Okay, I don't know. Does that look fantastic? I don't even care about how it looks really. Let's do primary, just do primary. That's fine, just do primary. Okay, so I've got my author, and she looks like a witch. I don't know, a very small thumbnail. She looks a little witch-like. Probably not the best photo to choose here, but that's okay. As you can see, I've done what I wanted to do. Now, let me keep trying to somehow work with this fucking disaster over here on the left. Let's put in text here. This is going to be the author name. All right, that needs to be a paragraph tag. Fantastic. What do I do now? I didn't put classes on everything because I was told I didn't have to do that, okay? What is this identifiable? I can't target the div because there's a bunch of them. And as you see, what the hell is my image do? I haven't told it to do anything, but it's suddenly looking like this image up here. It's got the same padding. It's got the same border radius. I need it to be a 1-to-1, like a square. I need it to have the 50 VW border radius. What is going on? Let's inspect this. I go to the HTML card. I go to CSS. Okay, well, the figure is why it's getting the spacing. Well, I had to put the avatar in a figure because that's technically correct, but the other thing had to be in a figure as well. Now they're both figures, so they're both getting the instructions on figure, and they're both images, so they're both getting a 16:9. They're both getting a 10-pixel border radius. So now what do I do? Okay, well, I guess to fix this, what I have to do is I have to come in and remember what we did earlier? We used this like sneaky little content wrapper class. Well, I'm just going to come in and say author wrapper, okay? Author. We'll just do an author wrapper. That'll be an identifiable thing where I can actually select some of these things, okay? So now what I think I'll do is I'll go into root, and in the author wrapper, I'll go get that figure element, and I'll probably undo the padding on that. Okay. All right. But now what I probably have to do, I'm going to have to get the image that's in there as well, okay? And what we're going to do with that is we're going to go with the aspect ratio, right, of 1:1. And then I think what we can then do is the border radius of 50 VW. We'll take that little dash out that we don't need. And then maybe we'll go with a width here of 100. No, that was too big, right? We did 60. Okay, that seems about right. Gonna need a border on that. Let's go 2 pixel solid, maybe primary, okay, to match what we got going on the right-hand side. The author wrapper, that's right. The author wrapper needs some instructions, okay? And for that, we're gonna have to display this of grid, and we're gonna have to do our grid template columns. We're gonna have to do that of the auto, the min-max 0, 1FR situation. We're gonna have to do I think it's align items here. Align items of center. Okay. Let's fix our gap situation. Go space XS on that. Okay. I think I'm there. I think that I got there. Now, here's the problem. All right. Remember I said earlier, you can't have H3s in your cards if you don't have an H2 in your section, right? Before we do this, let's do something else with this heading. Let's go with, we already did the size. Let's do the color as well. I'm just trying to prove a little bit of a point here. Let's go primary dark, okay? All right, excellent. So here, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to go back to our HTML card. We're going to have to go to find our H3, okay? We can go color, primary, dark here. Okay, now it's going to look exactly the same. All right, this is a paragraph. That's fantastic, okay? That's a P, that's a P. Okay. Now, I've got to fix something. I've got to fix the fact that these are not in a section. Like, let's say I'm just putting these randomly on a page. There's no section heading. There's no H2. So technically these have to be H2s. Okay. So let's just do this carefully and just watch. Just do this slowly. You might not catch it at first. I changed that to an H2. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Okay. Let's change this to an H2. Oh, shit. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of stuff happened there. Lost the size, lost the color. Okay. Well, just making that one little change is now going to force me to go back to my HTML card, find my, that's right. Those instructions only applied if that was an H3, and that's no longer an H3. I had to change it to an H2. So now I got to change that to H2 to fix it. And actually, sometimes it's going to need to be an H3, and sometimes it's going to need to be an H2. And so really what I have to do is I have to duplicate that instruction and just cover all bases. Just both of those bases have to be covered now, okay? Because of the way this is being done. Look how absurdly convoluted and messy this all is. And let's go to the front end to detect this, okay? Again, we have the same visual outcome. Let's go ahead and refresh. Same exact visual outcome. Let's go ahead and look at this author avatar thing right here, this image. It's getting HTML card author wrapper image. That's a specificity. You guys see that on hover, that specificity value of 0, 2, 1, okay? Let's look at the exact same thing over here. Let's go to blog card author avatar. That's where I put my instructions. 0, 1, 0. Far less specificity. Let's talk about a principle of writing CSS. One of the core principles, you guys already know about the cascade, right? So it cascades from the top to the bottom. And anything you put at the bottom is automatically going to overrule anything that came before it, except if the selector has more specificity. If it's a more specific selector, it will win regardless of where you put it, okay? And so when you're writing CSS, you have to understand that specificity is a very fragile thing. It's like a very sensitive thing, okay? If you use too much specificity, you can't do things later that you might want to do without unnecessarily creating even more specific. And you get into what I liked, one commenter described it as a specificity arms race. So one of the principles of writing good CSS is that you use the lowest specificity necessary to get the job done. You can always increase things later if it's needed. So let's use the lowest specificity to get the job done right now. Well, let's go back to the very first thing that we wrote, right here. Okay, this HTML card, target the image. Right away, that is 2 selectors. That's specific. You're saying, I need to target the image, but I need to target images that are inside this thing called the HTML card. Now, if we look at over here, all right, on the media, blog card media, that's one thing. That's it. I'm just saying, hey, if it has this class, it's going to get these styles. That's a 0-1-0 situation. Versus over on the other side, you already started with a 0-1-1 situation. You already started with higher specificity. And if you look at BEM, one of the key principles of BEM and one of the most valuable aspects of BEM, because everything has a unique identifier. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to select the parent to select the child. What I'm doing on the left, every child I try to select, I have to first select the parent. So it's already more specific. With BEM, it's creating what is called a flat style sheet. You want the style sheet to be as flat as possible, right? So just for example purposes, if I say my selector and then something else, that's not flat, okay? That's going in a linear fashion, all right? Or yeah, would you describe it as linear? It's going in an inline fashion. Let's use block and inline. It's going in an inline fashion rather than a block fashion, right? Versus BEM looks like this. My selector, my dash selector, double underscore something else, like the child, right? That's one thing. You can see right here, these are 2 separate things versus one thing, right? This is automatically more specific. This is automatically less specific. Even though they're doing effectively, visually, and with the rules, the exact same thing. But they have different consequences, okay? And so flatter is better. This BEM allows you to still be specific without the actual technical specificity that comes from targeting 2 separate things, a parent and then a child. And then you saw, what problem did I continue to run into over and over again? A lot of things are alike. There's not a lot of HTML selectors, guys. A figure is a figure is a figure is a figure. A div is a div is a div is a div. A span is a span, a span, a span. A paragraph is a paragraph. The minute you have more than one of those things, you're fucked. Now you have to introduce things like, oh, well, that thing needs an identifier. So I'll just put a class on that thing. And then I'll put a class on this thing called an author wrapper. And then there's the situation where there's this class called author wrapper just fucking floating around. Like, if you come back to a project 3 months later and you just see this author wrapper class, you're not looking at anything, on any particular page or whatever. Or maybe that, just imagine that this is a full website. There's 30 pages. You select one of these cards and you're like, author wrapper. Okay. Well, where has that been used? Do you have any idea? Like, can you safely change the values of anything related to, you don't know what's going to happen because you don't know where author wrappers, it's been used in this card, but you don't know where else it's been used because it has no, the name gives you no context. You just know that there could be author wrappers everywhere, right? There could be author wrappers everywhere. So we don't know, thus we can't safely touch it without risking breaking something else. Well, what does BEM do for you? Well, with BEM, I can first of all, if I just look at CSS, just because of the way BEM is structured, just because of the names of things, okay? And let's look at some examples. Blog card author wrapper. Compare that to the author wrapper we just looked at a second ago. I know exactly where this author wrapper lives, and I know it's confined to living there. It's only in my blog cards. So I can safely edit this thing. I'm given the context and the risk evaluation in the name itself, which is a huge advantage of BEM, okay? You can read CSS and literally know how the HTML is structured just by reading the CSS, if BEM is done properly. You can't do that on this side over here. This is fucking chaos. This is the wild, wild west. We're styling we're raw dogging figure tags over here and paragraphs and headings. And you saw when I changed the heading level, everything broke. And then I had to go write another rule. Oh, here's another rule that I got to make up for that. And what was our figure situation? The minute I had two figures and they both looked the same, I had to go override styling I put in earlier with new instructions. Whereas on the right-hand side, I just wrote new instructions from scratch. I didn't override anything. There was nothing to override. So this is a one-to-one comparison. And anybody that votes for the left-hand side, you have some explaining to do. You got some explaining to do, okay? On the right-hand side, I already explained it. This is objectively better. Objectively better for various reasons, okay, that we just went over. So now let's go into, and like I said, by the way, the problem gets worse and worse and worse. The more complex the thing you're building gets, the problem just gets exponentially worse. So even if the builder allows you to do targeting like this, you should not do it. It's bad. Bad practice. Bad practice. BEM is a much, much, much better practice. And then there's no doubt. What is the downside to BEM? The one downside they could offer is you got to write a lot of classes. But with auto BEM, you don't. So now there's no downsides. Now, some people will say, well, I'm just doing simple blog cards, Kevin. I mean, it's just going to have one featured image in it, and that's about it. And, I think always my heading's just going to be an H3. I don't really care about that semantic stuff and da-da-da-da-da. The principle is you don't have a crystal ball when you are doing web development. As much as you wish you did and you think you do not have a crystal ball. And so I want to build in such a way that I can add things later without introducing serious issues. And I can change things later without introducing serious issues and without having to do a bunch of manual labor that I don't want to do. That's why I use a class system. That's why I use BEM. That's why I worry about semantics in the front of the build and not try to come fix everything later, because fixing semantics later is a shit show. You got to do the semantics right as you go, and that's going to create a much better outcome. So, do we have any questions about this situation that we found ourselves in? A versus B. Now, is there a time where you would want to target all figure elements or all images or all this or all that? Probably not in a card scenario. There are global circumstances where you very may well want to do that, but not in a specific block scenario, okay? Because as you saw here, I may end up with two of those things in the same block. And so if it's not a very global decision, styling decision, you probably do not want to do it. You just want to use BEM and you want to move on with your life, okay? All right, you can ask questions, hashtag Q, hashtag question. So you got to see building a little bit of a blog card today. Just within the confines of this little scenario here. We didn't make anything, super beautiful or anything like that. But I think it drives the point home that things are done a certain way for really good reasons. Not just because someone's like, well, it's the way I prefer. I mean, you could pass it off as that. You could be like, well, that's just the way Kevin prefers. And, I prefer my own way. And so really what you're saying is I just don't prefer a fucking nightmare. That's what I don't prefer a nightmare, so I do it this way. If you prefer a nightmare and you want to readily admit that that's a nightmare on the left, I'm fine with that. That personal preference at that point, that's up to you, okay? But don't just act like, the right side is just my personal preference for really no reason other than my personal preference. That don't compute. Because I can very easily show why the preference is the way that it is. Not just because I woke up with a bug up my ass like, I just feel like, I just love BEM, I just really love it. No real good reasons, just I just love it. It's just a personal preference. That's not what's going on here. It's not what's going on. So it's really, really quite annoying when people insinuate that that's what's going on. When there's very, very clear, obvious reasons to do it this way over other methods. Okay, we're going to go into queues here. Let's do queue. There we go. By the way, questions can be related to anything. It's open season, so it could be automatic CSS questions, web design questions in general, copy questions, marketing questions, agency questions, pricing questions, SEO questions, or whatever you guys want to ask. Fair game. Okay. What is the difference in the character count of the code for each card? Which produces less code? Well, because I had to write a bunch of instructions twice on the left, you can see that that probably produced more code. On the right-hand side, but it's not just about more code either. It's about the specificity of the code. When you write a flatter style sheet, what's going to end up happening is the browser can process that faster because it's just doing one-to-one matching. It's like bang, bang, bang. There's a class style, class style, class style, class style, class style. Whereas the minute you write, and we'll just do this again, my card, okay, and we'll say child item. It's not a one-to-one match anymore. You've now introduced essentially what is conditional logic that has to be processed by the browser. So it's not just finding a child item and applying a class to it. It has to find a child item in a specific parent item and then apply the class to it. If we compare that to my card child item like this, that is one thing. It's doing a direct one-to-one match. It's finding everything with this one class on it and applying the style rules. There is no conditional logic here. There is no processing of, is this thing inside this other thing? The name suggests that it's a parent-child relationship, but we're using a single flat selector to do it. So you have a specificity advantage. You have a readability advantage because of this construct right here. You have now the order of styles doesn't matter anymore because I don't have things competing for styling rules, right? Everything has its own styling rule. There's no competition between selectors. So there's just a lot of advantages here, a lot of advantages. Not to mention that I can change the age. This is what is called, there's another principle that we should cover here as well, which is the principle of decoupling, okay? On the left-hand side, the styling rules are coupled with the HTML selectors, which you saw is a problem. The minute the HTML selector has to change, all the styling breaks. Whereas the BEM version on the right-hand side is decoupled from the BEM version doesn't care what the HTML is, right? It doesn't care if this grid is a div or a list, if these things are list items or divs. It doesn't care if this is an H2 and H3 and H4. It doesn't care if this is a span or a paragraph or anything else. It doesn't care what any of this is. The styling rules just go with the labels, which are the classes. And that's it. It has no opinion of what the HTML should be. It only has an opinion of what is a child of another thing. But not even in technical terms, just in the context of its name. So I am free to do anything I want with the HTML on this right side without fear of breaking anything. Whereas on the left, I will fucking break everything. The minute I start messing with like, for example, if these were, in fact, well, they're divs. They're just divs in a grid. And the minute somebody comes along and says, those actually need to be LIs in a UL. Well, if you had done any styling based on the div here, and what some people do, which is even fucking worse, is they'll take this HTML card thing, but when they write their CSS, they do it like this. Oh my gosh. What a disaster. So the minute that, first of all, you've increased the specificity once again for absolutely no reason. Absolutely no reason. You just were like, I'll just keep increasing specificity. But you've also now coupled it with the HTML for no reason. It didn't even care that this was a div a minute ago. But now it cares. Now it cares that it has to be a div in order for the styling to happen. So the minute you change that to a list item, all styling breaks. So this is definitely just dumb. This is just really dumb. You'll actually see that a lot, though. You'll see it a lot, though, but it's not smart. It's not smart. That's terrible. It's terrible practice. So right now, this doesn't care whether that's a div or an LI or anything else. It'll just give the styling. But when people do this kind of stuff, now it cares, okay? So see, there's a lot of ways that you could just go right off the edge of the cliff with CSS, which is why you really want to, study and philosophize and have these conversations and discussions. Because think of if you did entire projects with this kind of nonsense going on. I mean, the disaster that you're unknowingly creating as you go is a big, 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 big problem. Imagine doing all of this. This is a disaster, an absolute disaster, right? You don't want to be doing that stuff. Okay, let's go back here. Okay. Can you explain exactly what the 010 means in the inspector? Why 3 numbers? Okay. So if you let's go to CSS specificity calculator. This is probably the best way to just throw in selectors and learn. Okay. So the first number is whether it has an ID style on it or not. Okay. And this is the most specific part of the serialized scoring system for specificity. Okay. So as you can see right here, let's do the blog card, and then we'll do blog card _ image. Okay. Well, it was called media. So as you can see, it's scoring that right off the bat. 0 IDs have been styled. 1 class, attribute, or pseudo class has been styled, and that is the thing that I actually typed in here. No elements or pseudo elements have been styled. Okay. So the score is 0, 1, 0, right? Now we can compare that to down here. And this allows you to compare specificity, which is why I bring this up, okay? Really, really, really good thing to learn. I'm going to do blog card space image. 0, 1, 1. So again, no IDs have been styled, which is good. 1 class, attribute, or pseudo class has been styled. That is this right here. And then 1 element has also been styled. That is this image tag right here. And so you combine the image selector with the class selector, and you get a score of 0, 1, 1, which clearly beats out 0, 1, 0. And this is a game, guys, let's hear me very clearly. This is a game where the lowest score wins, okay? You don't want the high score in this game. The high score is absolutely atrocious, okay? The worse and worse things get, the higher the score gets. You only want to increase specificity when it is necessary to do so. And so as you can see, just comparing these 2 selectors, which visually do the same thing, one is clearly objectively better than the other. For not just the specificity reason, but for multiple reasons. One is better than the other, okay? All right. Now, if I did this, just the image, I now have a score of 0, 0, 1. This is the lower specificity selector versus this up here, okay? I can't do that though, can I? Because what will happen now? Any styling I give to just image will be applied to literally every image on the website, okay? So that's obviously not what I want to do. So I need to target a specific image. How do I do it? That's where I end up with my choices, and my choices have consequences, okay? So I say, well, I want the image in the blog card, and suddenly when I do it this way, it's a 0, 1, 1, which is a higher specificity than this method up here. Visual, same visual outcome, different consequences of the approach, right? Not to mention that the minute that I put another image in the blog card, they're both automatically styled the same way. And you saw with the author avatar situation, I did not want that to happen. So now I either have to undo what I already did, which is already a disaster, or I have to override what I already did, which is another disaster. So you end up with 2 bad solutions, right? I would say undoing what you already did the wrong way and doing it properly the right way would be the best option, obviously, other than overriding. But most people don't have the patience for that. So you know what they do? They just override. And then you'll get into a situation where you start seeing importance everywhere, like this. Okay? And it's not even registering on here because effectively this is like going to override everything other than other important rules. Okay. So you'll start to see that kind of nonsense. That alerts you to the fact that specificity has been poorly managed on this website. Anytime you have to use important, you fuck something up earlier. Okay. That's what that means essentially. Okay. So you want to avoid those situations at all costs. So what is the solution? The solution is to philosophize understand the approaches, understand the consequence of the approaches, and then follow the approach that doesn't have any cons and has all pros, right? Because again, I challenge people, what are the cons of BEM? You can give me one real one, which is it's a lot of typing class names. But then I gave you the solution for that. You auto BEM it with automatic CSS. That's gone. What are the other negatives of BEM? There are none. Okay, so that's the way that we go. Because I can give you con after con after con after con of these other approaches. So let's not do that. It's very simple. But it has to start with a conversation. It has to start with, we got to care about the philosophy behind what we're doing. We got to care about the objective reality that there is a more efficient, more maintainable way to do this. And there are many less efficient, less maintainable disaster scenarios that we could possibly create if we just don't care. Or if we get taught wrong. Which is why I suggest, like, you know, it's very important when you're teaching something, either say this, say, I've already done all the philosophizing and I can lay it out for you and I can show you the pros and cons of every method. And then I'll prove to you that this is the best practice. Or I'm new at this shit. This is the way I do it right now. But, you know, caution, because I'm not actually an expert here. Okay? Both are valid, by the way. You don't have to be an expert to make videos. Just tell people, I don't know. I don't understand all the philosophy behind all of this. Okay? This is just the way I was taught, or this is the way I do it right now. And it may not be the best way. Okay, all that is fine. You just, you know, you give people a trigger warning. Whatever they want to call it. Let's go to chat again. All right. When you say Bricks doesn't allow that, multiple selectors, are you in effect saying that you wish it did? Yes, 100%. 100%. Not for that reason, not so that I can do that, but there are very legitimate cases where you want to be able to use actual selectors and not just a class system. So Bricks has a class system. It is not a selector system. I would like it to have a selector system. Okay, how are you managing passwords with Arc browser? I heard Keychain doesn't integrate particularly well. I use LastPass. No, I don't. I use 1Password. I used to use LastPass. Now I use 1Password. And it seems to integrate perfectly fine. How would you convince a client that a graphic designer is probably better than Canva? I think Canva graphics lets people violate accessibility stuff, low color contrast, etc. Well, I mean, a graphic designer and Canva are two very different things in the sense that one is a human being and the other is an application. And one is a human being that knows what they're doing, presumably, and the other is an application that encourages people who don't know what they're doing to think they know what they're doing. So just on that face alone, I would say that why is there an argument there, right? What are they arguing against? Are they saying, well, you know, Canva is much cheaper than a real designer? That's true. Is it though? Is it though? Well, now we're philosophizing again. Is it really cheaper? Because if you fuck it up in Canva and that causes you to lose money because your brand looks like a kindergarten brand and thus it has no trust and the conversion rates are super low, that's actually quite expensive, isn't it? A lot of people don't factor in lost opportunity cost, which is gigantic. Like that's huge, a huge factor. And so you should always bring that up, right? Like it's cheaper to write your own copy than it is to hire a copywriter. But is it? It's only cheaper on the surface. It's only cheaper at the very first step. The problem with most people in life is that they don't think past the first step. You need to help clients think beyond step one. Yes, Mr. Client, it is cheaper to write your own copy. But if we think 5 steps ahead to when the visitor arrives on the page and reads that shitty copy and then doesn't buy what you sell, then it becomes very expensive, right? So let's stop focusing on step 1 and let's start focusing on step 5. And this is why very successful people hire copywriters, hire designers. They've already gone through this. They already know what step 5 is, and they're not just focused on step 1. And you just have to help your clients get down that path. Okay, questions. It has to have a hashtag Q. I'm seeing a lot of questions, it seems, that do not have the hashtag. And remember, you can ask questions on anything. It's an open question stream. We are at 1 hour, 19 minutes. I got to cut this short because I got to go to the beach today. We're going to the beach today. So we're going to go 10 more minutes. It could be a question about what, by the way, I'm glad my camera has not, the fan on the back is doing a miraculous job. That was a fantastic addition to the setup. We can go back to questions about this particular pop quiz scenario here. We can do questions about anything. Let me know. Drop them in. I wish I had 2 screens. Let's see. What camera are you using that is overheating? What is it? A Sony something, Alpha something, something, something. I don't know. I could look it up later. It's you know, it's a good camera. I like it. It's only good in 4K. It sucks in 1080p. And it overheats in 4K. So you need an extra fan attached to it. It's not a great scenario, but it's the B setup. It's fine. I more and more understand the need and power of something like bricks plus ACSS plus frames. Is there a chance of an updated boilerplate setup quick start video 2024 for such stack? Well, I would be watching Automatic CSS 101, which is essentially going front to back of how to set up, use Automatic CSS, workflow, principles, philosophy, features. It's going to cover almost everything you need to know. Now, Frames is built with Automatic CSS. So once you understand what Automatic CSS is doing and how you're supposed to use it, then Frames makes perfect sense to you. And you might need some help like, oh, how do I adjust this particular frame to do X, Y, Z? And at that point, you just ask that question in the support community and everybody will chime in and tell you exactly how to do it. Frames has a lot of importance in the CSS. What do you think about that? It doesn't. It probably doesn't have much of any. Are you talking about specificity? Are you talking about, it doesn't have the important tags unless we're overriding something that a page builder like Bricks decided to do in a really weird fashion. For example, there is one scenario in Automatic CSS in the framework itself where you will find important tags, and it is with display grid, okay? So for example, well, you can probably see it on this grid right here. Remember I made this a grid 2 with this utility class right here? So we'll go find grid 2, and there you can see it right there. Grid 2, display grid, important, okay? Why is that happening? Well, because Bricks, and I'm not arguing against this necessarily, but Bricks makes everything display flex by default. Where Bricks goes wrong is that it uses specificity inappropriately to do that. It should use no specificity to do that, in which case we would not need important on display grid, right? But here's the thing. You actually kind of still do. Because if I change this to display flex, like I have a grid 2 on here, because a lot of people, and this is just to kind of also help out users who just generally do things, you know, they don't read the manual, okay? Let's just be honest. They don't read the manual. They don't watch the videos. So they come in and they put a grid 2 on here. And then later on down the line, they're like, you know, they do some bullshit at the ID level, you know, like vertical column. They'll start putting this shit in, and then they'll go try to use another utility class here for changing the grid structure at a mobile breakpoint, and it won't work. And they'll be like, fucking ACSS is broken. And then we got to inspect it. And then we're like, why'd you put display flex column at the ID level at that random breakpoint? That's actually what's breaking it. And it's just a whole disaster scenario. So we use important because, as you see, when I just changed this to display flex column, nothing happened. It did not allow the user to do some dumb shit right here, right? It didn't allow the user to do that, right? What they should be doing is grid 1. That's what will stack it here. Very simple, okay? Or I wouldn't want to do it there. You'd probably want to do it more like down here, right? So you could do grid 1 there, or you could use the grid 1 at the S breakpoint utility class if you wanted to do it that way. Bunch of different ways to do it. What you would not want to do is to start using display flex column, changing the grid from you don't want to do that. So the important on the display grid just ensures that it's not going to break when, you know, people are willy-nilly throwing values and inputs and stuff like that. Because we'll get a gazillion support requests. Like, my grid's broken, and it's got the class, and it's like, but what did you do? What did you do at the ID level? what were you trying to do? And what did you do? Because you broke it. You broke it. And so we just kind of made that situation a little bit unbreakable because it's such a common scenario. And the fact that Bricks makes everything display flex by default. Bricks even, page builders do the craziest stuff. Page builders are just outlandish with their opinions, right? If you do display flex, it by default is no wrap. Flex does not wrap by default. Well, Bricks, it chooses a random breakpoint. I can't even remember if it's this one or this one, where it just decides that it's going to start wrapping stuff for you. And it will absolutely break different layouts if you didn't want it to wrap. And then you'll be like, why is it doing that? I didn't tell it. And then you got to go inspect it, and you're like, oh, Bricks decided for me that that layout should wrap at this breakpoint. Just outlandish. That's an outlandish opinion. Outlandish opinion that should not happen. And if I, built a page builder, that kind of stuff would not happen. So it's just, we got to make up for stuff like that. And it's just, it's a lot of mess. It's a lot of mess. I really wish we had a perfectly clean, unopinionated slate to work from. But there is no page builder that gives you that. They all have all these opinions. Okay, a couple more questions here. Do you see yourself using subgrid for card layouts once it is a bit more support? Yeah, I'm a big fan of the concept of subgrid. There's a lot of good use cases for it, for sure. It's not like every grid needs a subgrid, but some situations subgrid will come in very handy. But it's another thing that has to be taught. It's another thing that has to be incorporated. It's another thing that's not particularly easy to understand right off the bat. So some visualization, I think, is going to be necessary. But yeah, it is going to be an important feature for sure. All right, let me go back to the general chat and see what people are up to. Thank you guys for tuning in, by the way. Does your hire me link work on your website as scheduled? Consultant called and did not get a link. It's one of the automations is having some issues, but yeah, it probably worked. I'll look at it and get it to it. If I can talk. Get it to you manually. Okay, we answered that. I prefer explanation 2. Tell them to go do supplemental research. Yeah, that too. Sometimes you need to add important to override some plugin styles so it fits your website. Yeah, because the plugin is using unnecessary specificity. You can add default opinions, and let me clarify this. Page builders can be like automatic CSS is opinionated. Well, if you ask it to be. If you say, I want auto gaps in automatic CSS. In fact, let me show you where that is, right? Okay, so if I go to spacing and I go to automatic spacing, auto container gap, auto content gap, auto grid gap, those will auto space your content, your containers, everything, right? That's an opinion. Now, you did opt into that opinion. You did opt in by default. You have to come turn it off, right? But at the same time, it applies the styling with 0 specificity. 0, 0, 0 is the score on the specificity of that default styling, which means you can override it at any time, in any way, with any method that you prefer. And there's no battling for overriding it. That's the best way to do it. And that's how plugins should handle it. That's how page builders should do it. Your specificity of your opinions should be 0, 0, 0. And now we are still at a blank slate. We got the opinion, and we can leave it that way if we want to, but we have a blank slate to work from, essentially. Okay. I hate how I have to hop back and forth because I'm so used to just having 2 monitors. 2 monitors is the way to go, for sure. Okay, I more and more understand the need and power. Okay, we already did that one. Oh, you posted it like twice. Okay. All right. I saw it. I found it. I read it. Before BEM, I was writing CSS like in the left. And then when I found BEM, life changed. Why? Well, I have cards everywhere. Same CSS, but I use modifiers. Yeah, you could use modifiers as well. Modifiers gets a little bit tricky, though, especially in a page builder, because there are limitations on how those modifiers can be styled. I see so many people putting important everywhere. Yeah, Yeah, that is, oh, wow, with the fan, it's already giving me a warning as well there. See, there it goes. And it gives you the warning, like, literally right before, right? It's not actually a warning at that point. Like, thank you for the warning, but just going off would have been, the exact same scenario. I'm horrified to say that I've in the past written dissertations to achieve specificity. Yeah, it's there's a lot of really bad CSS out there. A lot of really bad CSS being taught out there, that's what really is a little bit annoying. Because people pick that up and they just go think that that's a great way to do it, and they're creating an absolute nightmare. Okay, all right, I'm out of time, guys. Like I said, I have to go to the beach for a little bit. Got to do some relaxation and some rest. I'll be back online later and back next Tuesday for another episode of WDD Live, probably back to our regularly scheduled roasting of websites. Some of them are great, though. Some of them are great, and we talk about why they're great. Some of them are bad, and we talk about why they're bad, and everybody learns a lot. But I will see you guys next week. Peace.